We're keeping our focus hyper-local on this Sunday morning with a municipal tour taking us from the seacoast into the Lakes region. We're getting things started with Mayor Declan McEachern of Portsmouth, who just won his third term. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Adam. Great to be here.
So take us through what is on the agenda for Portsmouth and your leadership in the next 2 years.
It's going to continue to be about affordability, and so that's both housing. You know, we got to make sure that we're building enough housing. We're building faster and more housing than anywhere else in the state. But it also comes down to how are we making do with what we have. So we worked really hard over the last 2 years to make sure the budgets are not going up. That meant some tough choices, having buyouts, but making sure that if you have been one of those people that's been in Portsmouth for 30 years, that's built this community, that you're not going to be pushed out of your home because of revaluations. That's the critical focus that we all have to focus on around the state, is how are we making sure that this great state that we have is going to be an affordable state.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. You know, people want to live in your community, but you know, speak to that, and is particularly with housing. You do have people who've been there for decades and decades, and suddenly, you know, that tax bill comes due and they're looking at it and they say, gosh, I can't afford this anymore.
Yeah, I don't think that's specific to Portsmouth. I think that's literally everywhere in New Hampshire, and that's the test that we have to be able to pass, is if our costs continue to rise and, you know, the state continues to pass mandates down to the local level without also, you know, the money to fund those, it's the calculus is just not adding up. You know, we need to have a priority in Concord that's focusing on saying, hey, if we're going to mandate this on school health insurance, we're going to also have the money to pay for it.
Yeah, you mentioned school health insurance, these risk pools. This is something, you know, that doesn't make a lot of headlines, but it's the bill's coming due in many ways, and cities are looking at that and saying, gosh, we got to spend a few $1 million here.
Yeah, I think, Adam, this is going to be, if you're watching close up and you're focusing on the municipal Sunday after Thanksgiving, this is going to be something that you've paid attention to. But the state said that every community has to have a higher money into the pool, without any ability to fund that themselves. They would rather spend that money on vouchers than to pay it into the risk health insurance that we have. That means that communities like Concord, communities like Portsmouth, folks that are using this are going to have to pay, and I think Concord already passed their appropriation, a huge increase to the budget, and that's a direct result of the state saying we're not actually focused on property taxpayers. We are focused on whatever they are doing in Concord, but it's not actually lowering the bills for us.
As a mayor and a local official, you have to see people every day, your friends and neighbors. You're interacting with the people who are affected by your policies. You know, what do you hear from them in particular, you know, when it's this idea of, gosh, I feel like I'm paying more than ever, and yet services are either flat or having to be scaled back?
Yeah, I think that's the toughest part of the job. So you have it on one end, you have folks that, you know, either I grew up with, that I know, that are coming in. Maybe our kids are going to preschool, they're renting, and they're just saying to themselves, I can't afford to stay here. Like, the housing is not there for them. So, you know, we're really proud of the work that we're doing on that. The other equation is, you know, we could be selling these properties instead of building affordable housing on them, getting money into the budget. We're choosing to build and invest in our future. But that means that seniors and those that are looking on a fixed income and looking at their tax bill, they're like, Declan, I trust you, I know you, you know me, but like, this is not something that I can sustain. Those conversations are the toughest conversations. I look to them and I say, we're doing, you know, everything we can right now, and it's our promise to do even more. People don't want politicians just to tell you, hey, this is as good as we can do it. We need to be able to be advocating things like homestead exemptions. Like, there's a lot more that we can do as a state. We're just not focused on these affordability issues of the state. We're focused on kind of, you know, ideological pursuits and, you know, partisan issues. We're not focused on actually running a better government for less money for more people.
Do you support some of these state efforts that would kind of crack that nut for the communities that are more development resistant and force areas to, you know, I guess some people say it's kind of an end of local control, but would kind of crack that open for more housing in areas that necessarily,
you know, I think that the state's never, I don't know if they're going to have the ability to do that. I don't see it passing. Like, I guess I'm not supporting things that I think not have any chance of passing. That has no chance of passing, where the state's going to come in and say, you're going to have to build here, you're going to have to build here. what could happen is the state could say, hey, if you are a community that's building and you are actually developing, like Portsmouth, and you're developing and putting more housing, we're going to make sure that we're delivering, more resources there. Like when Portsmouth is building more housing than Manchester, there's a problem, and the state needs to be rewarding communities that are building, knowing that there's a lot that goes into that.
Circling back to the affordability and housing, what are you guys doing to make sure that people can move in and have a place that's affordable in Portsmouth where so many people want to
Sure. So, this is another kind of below the fold topic, but zoning, we've opened up zoning so that we allowed an old, we call it the Christ Church, but an old Episcopalian church becomes affordable housing, and they've gone through and won the tax credits to the Portsmouth Housing Authority. We've changed our zoning to allow more density, especially on the outlying areas. We don't have the infrastructure in the middle of the city, but there's plenty of places that we can build, and we're allowing developers to kind of meet that moment. And we're also saying, if you're going to build, you're going to have some of that to be affordable. Those are things that any community can do. We're doing it right now without really any state assistance. That's something that I think needs to change.
A lot of interplay right now between national and state, national and local issues. Curious for your thoughts on immigration policy, how you've seen that enforced in Portsmouth, and obviously you guys have the ICE D-10A flights out of Pease, and there's been a lot of people have said about that in your community.
Yeah, so those flights stopped. So they went back down to Massachusetts. I don't know if they're going to be coming back. They've happened before out of Pease. I think the focus that we have is there's a lot of folks in our community that are hardworking folks. When the ICE crackdown started happening and restaurants started getting concerned, there's going to be phone calls here. We made sure that we passed a resolution that said we're just going to follow the law. We're going to make sure that if somebody's taken, we want the information of where they're going to give that to their families. We're not somebody that says we all have to follow the law regardless of where we are in New Hampshire, and we're going to continue to do so. But we want them to follow the law too, in terms of telling us exactly who they're taking, what's going on there.
I'm interested also, energy policy is a big component of cost of living and affordability. What your thoughts are when you hear the governor talking about small modular nuclear power and whether or not that might go in down the road there at Seabrook?
We have a couple of modular nuclear power plants right across the road from us in the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. I think that the flexibility is, we don't necessarily have to get to nuclear. It would be great if we could just put solar in our house and actually get the benefit from that solar ourselves without having pumping it back into the grid. There's some really simple things we could do, net metering. In Portsmouth, we were happy to be able to sign up for to be able to allow for you to choose if you want, just regular old electricity, or if you want to have solar. Obviously the regular electricity is going to be a lower price, but the solar, that allows people to choose. I think it's about choice and all of the above strategy when it comes to that. I guess I'm still shocked that you have to go through so many hoops just to be able to use your electricity yourself, and that there's no sort of net metering where we can actually benefit from that, which would take strain off the grid. And so that's where I think, before we get to all of these, modular nuclear, we got to be able to say, hey, we got solar, let's make sure that we're actually getting what we deserve and what we should be putting back into our pockets from when we put it on a roof.
Some singles and doubles to go with the home runs. I wanted to ask you before we wrap up, hearing a lot about state issues here, any interest in the future in running for, say, governor or any higher office?
I'm really happy, doing the work that I do in Portsmouth. It's rewarding. I get to see, look people in the eye and say, this is meaningful. The issues that we're facing in Portsmouth aren't limited by our borders. They extend out. And as I look at those issues, if there's a way for me to serve the state that I love, then I'm going to seriously consider that.
All right. Mayor Declan McEachern of Portsmouth, thanks for joining us, and I hope you had a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Adam.